Ready?
Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Pilot Light, a podcast where we talk about the first episode of a TV show and then we talk about it. I've mentioned that. My name's David, and I am less than coherent this evening.
My name's Sam, and is this The Incredibles? Is that what we're watching? Pixar something? I don't know.
And I'm Joe, and it's kind of like peeing your pants.
This is.
Yes, it's exactly like urinating all over your legs. This week we watched this year's Invincible, the superhero genre cartoon for adults on Amazon Prime.
This year, it's last month. Last month. It's currently releasing weekly, I think, and there's going to be 6 episodes, and there are 4 out. We obviously watched the first one. So what were our thoughts here? I mean, Joe, you recommended it. I hadn't even heard of it. I don't know. I was just basically, I think, looking at shows, and then this kind of popped up, and it's recent, and it was getting quite good reviews, and then, just like a little bit of reading about it, it seemed quite an interesting kind of take. And I know we've done quite a few superhero kind of things recently, but this is kind of superheroes and slightly different.
Podcast, us as a culture, us as in Disney, everyone's fucking too much.
Yes, it's true.
There's some like cultural psyche thing going on about superheroes that we're going to enjoy talking about in about 10 years. We're like, oh, remember all that? Remember all those superheroes? Let's get back to our westerns. That's what I want. I want more westerns.
Superhero westerns, Sam. Yeah. That's what it's going to be.
In this show, in case you haven't heard about it, and just a heads up, we are going to be spoiling at least the first episode, probably many more after that. In this show, it's an adult animated series based on the Skybound Image comic about a teenager whose father is the most powerful superhero on the planet. It's kind of like a growing up superhero story. You know,
it's a superhero. It's a superhero going through puberty. That's what
coming of age. Yeah, that's and it's one of those like weird shows. Even just how it looks, like the animation is kind of a bit odd, a bit not in a bad way, just in you could have noticed.
It's like a graphic novel. It's like a graphic novel kind of thing,
like a 90s Saturday morning cartoon.
Yes,
specifically talking about the look of it, all of the all the close shots with characters are okay. I think any establishing shot with any kind of landscape looks like shit. It looks like He-Man. And I'm sure that must be like a very intentional aesthetic they're going for because,
and not just shit animation, like
not just cheap
animation.
Yeah. Either way, I don't think it detracts from the show as such.
No,
like, you do notice like, why does this look like shit? As a helicopter, like, why does that look so bad?
It's not going to be because of lack of like budget, because as we get into, the cast in this is pretty stacked, so it's obviously intentional. It looks like a graphic novel. It very much looks like almost like a graphic novel on TV.
So why don't you tell us a bit about the I guess the sausage making involved in this, Joe? This was your suggestion.
The sausage making, hey?
The sausage making is my favourite term to use on the podcast.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So where'd it come from, Joe?
So this is basically from the writer of the comic book, of the graphic novel The Walking Dead. That's his most famous work, but this is Robert Kirkman. And he also wrote this one, so which becomes kind of obvious once you start looking into the cast. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later, but there's an awful lot of the cast from The Walking Dead TV show voice the characters in this. So that's kind of where this one came from. And I don't know about you guys, but like when I was watching it, and okay, we'll get into the plot and some of the things that happens, but some of the like it gets quite dark, quite kind of brutal later on, and I'm like, this is like The Walking Dead.
This kind of follows in the Zack Snyder's been on my mind this last couple of weeks. This follows in the Zack Snyder, like, oh, it's got to be dark, it's got to be brutal, people have got to get their fucking heads chopped off. But like, there's quite a lot of levity around it. Like, this is this episode especially, it's quite funny, but like not necessarily in a. I think it's quite competently funny rather than they're not striving to make loads of like no one's throwing pies, although maybe they should.
No.
But like it's so we open and we'll get into the plot properly in a minute. We open on a John Hamm voiced security guard talking to his buddy about
Is that John Hamm?
Yeah, that's John Hamm.
Yes, you got, yeah.
Why is John Hamm in this? Like,
we'll get into the insane stunt casting in this TV show in a minute.
Actually, right, go on.
But he voices the security guard. He's talking to his buddy about, like, he starts weeping basically about his stepson who had a drug problem and he's over it. And he's like, I'm so proud of him. And
I've
like,
never had a son of my own. And
it's a really touching, emotional scene for a character who is not a character in this. And like, it's 2 minutes of this, and I'm like, what am I watching? What exactly am I watching?
100%. What the hell?
What's going on?
I knew nothing about this at all. Nothing about this. The only thing I did notice as I was loading it up on Amazon Prime was like adult animated. Like, so that's something that is like a distinction between animated TV and adult animated TV.
The first 37 minutes, you could almost sit there and go, "Why is this for an adult?" And then, the last 10 minutes, that's why.
Yep.
This guy did Walking Dead. Yeah, I can see that now.
Yeah. The last 10 minutes, and we'll come to it in the plots discussion, but the last 10 minutes when we get some absolutely like quite shocking violence. Like
I found it quite cathartic after the Snyder Cut, to be honest. Like honestly, I was like, good.
Right here,
good.
officer. Here he is. Right, that one there, right there, please. I do think it's kind of like it is quite shocking, but yeah, this is one of those shows that it's a slow burn. I think this opening episode, isn't it? And we get to kind of explore the universe, the world that's been created through the comics and the various different
created or ripped off wholesale from Marvel and DC. The main character is called Mark Grayson, and I was like, Grayson, and again, didn't know anything about it. Grayson, I was like, well, the Flying Graysons. This is a Batman-like thing, and the similarities and the like wholesale theft. I don't know how this isn't copyright infringement.
I think it's an homage. I think all of this is
does it count as like satire almost?
I think so, because you've got your kind of like Batman character who looks pretty much like Batman. Like,
you've got your Guardians of the Globe, and we could maybe go through them just briefly because there are some funny sort of like silly bits in there.
Yeah, yeah. So while you look up the cast, Dave, I think there's a good like array of different characters, and it's for me what I found a little bit like weird was how the kind of tone on for the first 10 or so minutes. Like, I wasn't really sure what they were going for. I knew nothing about it. I saw adult anime and I thought, is this going to be like a comedy? Is this going to be like a gross out sweary comedy where a bit like Archer, that type of whatever. A bit like Archer, where you've got like it's like a spoof with loads of funny adult things in it in that sense. And it kind of wasn't that. It's actually quite genuine. It's quite earnest, I think, in terms of the story it's trying to tell. But then we get to see some of these characters.
Story about fathers and sons.
Yes. Oh, for God's sake! Let's park a discussion about that in a minute because I'm getting so bored of this shit. Honestly.
Well, let's run through the sort of cast we get in this episode, and we'll not dwell on any of these guys because there's not loads to talk about here. So obviously the main character, Mark Grayson, he's Invincible. He's that character, and he's son of Superman. He's essentially like all the character bio you need for this guy.
Yeah, son of Superman.
Son of Superman.
Omni-Man, you mean? Yes.
Superman. Although I will say, J.K. Simmons, a character who both sounds and looks like J.K. Simmons and is also Superman, is superior to actual Superman. So you get Stephen Yeun. Voices Mark Grayson, and he's Glenn from The Walking Dead. We'll just basically be listing Walking Dead characters here. Yes. J.K. Simmons voices his father, so he basically Superman, although in this they call him Omni-Man because of copyright issues. And Sandra Oh doing a pretty good performance as the mother. Actually, I enjoyed.
Yeah, Sandra Oh's good. I know her from watching endless episodes of Grey's Anatomy. Anyway, I just have a moment for J.K. Simmons because that man is just
J. Jonah
brilliant.
J.K. Simmons.
his performance as J. Jonah Jameson in 2003 or 2002 Spider-Man is like one of my favorite movie performances of all time. Like, I just love his energy and like the way he looks in that, and then they basically copy that. No, they don't copy it because it's a character, but it looks exactly the same. You know,
this is a side note, Sam, because you won't be aware of it. In the new Spider-Man films, he's in them as J. Jonah Jameson, except rather than running a newspaper in the new universe, he's got like who's that like big Trump supporter who's got the talk show, and he's like the really right wing guy. That J. Jonah Jameson has a show like that in the new Spider-Man universe,
the video game as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's still J.K. Simmons, and I'm like, yes, if this is the one thing the Tobey Maguire trilogy gave us, it's J.K. Simmons in Spider-Man.
Whoa, I will not have a word said against those. Well, the first film, the others are trash, but I do like that.
I will have lots of words to say about 48-year-old Tobey Maguire playing Spider-Man. Thank you very much.
I'm up. Let's do more superheroes. Let's do that next week. For the movie episode.
So we will talk more about J.K. Simmons, I'm certain, because he's a big part of this show, and he's a treasure, obviously, as we said. J.K. Simmons, please come on our podcast. So you have the Justice League, and they're called the Guardians of the Globe. Now, I'm just going to reel off their superhero names because some of them are funny and some of them are. But you've got War Woman. I wonder who that's based on.
War Woman.
War Woman. They're so unimaginative. They really made me laugh, all of them. You've got Green Ghost, Martian Man. Red Rush is probably my favourite character. He's Russian the Flash. You've got Darkwing, who's the Batman analog, and the one that I was a bit like, who are you? Is Immortal, like the sort of leader guy. I think he's meant to be, allegedly, according to Wikipedia, he's allegedly meant to be based on like a Superman and a villain from from DC Comics, but who cares? These are every single one of the actors who voices these characters appeared in The Walking Dead as series regulars.
Yeah, Lauren Cohen's probably the biggest one. She was Maggie in The Walking Dead.
Yeah. But every single one of them was on The Walking Dead at one point. And I do say the term actors because I think we maybe need to it's a weird thing in this, and we've seen this for a few years now. But I feel like, can we give voice actors voice work, please, and give actors acting work? I don't mind.
Yep.
I don't mind.
I was just going to.
But go on, Joe.
I was just going to say that just like in The Walking Dead, these characters all die miserably, but we'll get to that one.
Spoilers, but yeah, they do.
I totally agree, Dave, because it's one of those things of let's go back to John Hamm. Now, is he in the rest of this? He's literally just in one scene.
He's in episode 2. He's in episode 2.
He's in
another cutaway scene.
So that it takes away from my point slightly, but John Hamm doesn't need the work. He's got plenty of money. Let's share the performances around. I don't understand. I hate this stunt casting of having some multi-millionaire famous guy come in and do a few lines, which he recorded from his house probably, and didn't even get dressed. And there's actors out there voice actors, as you say, Dave, who are struggling and need the work and all these other things, and not just let's not just bring in John DiMaggio and all these other it's Billy West here's again, and it's I just think
there's a distinction, isn't there? I think that all the people in this show are doing a decent job. I think because voice work it's a different skill set to live action acting. I don't want to sort of denigrate anyone on either side of this, but there's a different skill set involved. Mark Hamill is a character in this. And he's kind of the one guy in this that I would consider to be both an actor and a voice actor, because I think that he's done enough of. Do you know what I mean? He's done enough of both to really sort of merit it. But everyone else, including J.K. Simmons, they're very much on the actor side.
But let's have a quick skim through though, because we've got all of these people we've already mentioned. We also have Zachary Quinto. For some reason, we have Mark Hamill, as you say. We have Clancy Brown.
Whose character, by the way, can I just say his superhero name is Robot? That's literally it.
Yeah, that's Zachary Quinto. We have Clancy Brown, Mark Hamill, Seth Rogen, Michael Dorn, Worf, John Hamm, Mae Whitman. I mean, there are like lots and lots of very famous
Gillian
people in this.
Jacobs, she's
My
pretty
hero,
famous.
Jason
Community.
Mantzoukas.
Days, yeah. And but in this first scene, we kind of get like an introduction to all of these characters. They all have their moment, which I fucking hate. I fucking hate in superhero films of like, now it's my turn to punch the bad guy. Now it's my turn to use my unique ability to. I just honestly, it's tiresome. It is tiresome. But we do get like, I think it's a pretty cool scene when there's someone trying to attack these two bad guys. Are trying to attack the White House. And I like the focus on let's get the civilians out of the way, you know. And there's some funny bits, especially with the Red Rush, like zooming everyone away.
Sounds like Thrush. Funny.
Yeah,
A++.
So the Flash is zooming everyone away from the danger, and then everyone starts throwing up because of the like, you know, inertia that they're
moving so quickly. Yeah.
Which again, to that tonal thing of like, I thought this is where we're going. I thought, oh, it's going to be like a satire. It's going to be like a funny, what happens when these superheroes do silly things. And then it wasn't that quite quickly after that point. You know what I mean? So there's just that tone thing is very strange. But it's a good opening. I was curious at least.
For like, it opens with what I would consider to be the most boring part of any superhero genre thing. They have a big fight.
You mean the superhero genre? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I know, but it opens with the least intrigue, and they do a decent job of it. I like these villains. I can't remember their names. Who were arguing about which one of them's the clone. I think that's funny, but not. They do enough of it for it to be amusing, and not so much that it like stops the episode dead for it.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Then we get to meet Mark Grayson, who is who's the kind of main character of the show, and he's a teenager. I think he's about 17, maybe. You know, he's still in high school, and he's obviously the son of a god, a literal god living in the suburbs, as you do.
Just Invincible Christ himself.
Yeah. And it's quite funny to have like, he's basically not hit his superhero puberty yet.
Yeah, and he's quite late to it as well. Like, because by the sounds of it, like you know, he should have had them by now, and he's had no powers whatsoever. And he's like, he tries to. There's quite a funny scene when he walks out of the house and he tries to like fly, and he like jumps up in the air and goes about like 3 feet and then lands again. And the postman or something's looking at him like, "You're an idiot."
Yeah. So it's quite a good contrast, isn't it, between like the incredible superheroes we see at the beginning, and then you know, this loser who can't fly, who can't do anything.
We have the high school scene, don't we? And we're introduced to like a couple of other sort of like minor characters. We've got the friend and
the bully,
the prospective girlfriend, the woman that he sort of like steps in to tell this bully to leave her alone.
The woman he fails to protect.
I know, and then she kicks the bully in the balls, and I'm like, yes, absolutely, women can look after themselves.
He then proceeds to ignore as well, because then he moves on in episode 2. He moves on to a different woman, and she's still there.
Well, she comes back, but I was going to say that they I'm going to find the actor's name, but this lady, they redrew the character to look more like the actor, which is always an odd thing when they do, because it's a cartoon, it's a voice role.
Well, I suppose it's a creative choice, isn't it? I did feel like, because we'll skip ahead a little bit, but we basically get to see Mark Grayson with his superpowers, and again, I have absolutely no knowledge of the comics whatsoever, so maybe this is following a thread that's through there, but I was kind of interested in like what happens when a superhero isn't a superhero yet. And like seeing that progress from being this
it's Peter Parker jumping off that building, isn't it? It's
living in a dad's shadow and not being able to do anything because he hasn't hit puberty yet. I felt like I was a bit more. I wanted to see more of that, and we get that resolved in this episode. Yeah, maybe
his first manifestation of power is he managed to throw a trash bag into space at work.
Yes, but I think what I was expecting though was like a little bit longer. To maybe that would be the arc of the first couple episodes.
But they just put their foot on the gas and he's flying around like lifting buildings and things within about 30 seconds.
He has his own costume.
In a certain way, actually, I'm glad we just skipped that
Yeah.
quote unquote origin story and like
Maybe.
I do quite like the whole thing as well, though, because they do go a little bit into him like finding his powers, and I actually really quite enjoyed like him trying to learn to fly because he doesn't know how to do it. And the first few times, like he doesn't know how to land, so he's literally just like smashing into the ground at like 100 miles an hour. And I actually quite enjoyed that because there's like 3 or 4 scenes where he's just flying around, and then his like arrival is just him creating a crater in the floor. I quite enjoyed that.
It's a funny bit. Again, like the comedy is somewhat consistent throughout. There's a really funny bit early on where they're all fighting outside the White House, and what's 2 funny bits rather. Somebody says about the White House, like, "Oh, there's an attack on the White House. Don't turn that off." And she's like, "Dude, they burn the White House down like twice a year. Like, who can care anymore?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally the reason it's the White House because it was burnt, so they painted it white.
So I don't even think the president lives there anymore. Like, it's just, it's a funny sort of like, of course, the White House is attacked 3 times a year in this universe where there are superheroes. But the other bit is Omni-Man. Like, there are all these Justice League knockoffs are fighting these blue things, and one of the leader of the Justice League is like about to fight this guy, and Omni-Man just sort of comes in and just sort of like flings him away like casually, and it's this nice little like, what a dick. It's a real like, they all exchange this look like, oh, this fucking guy's here.
He says later on, when in doubt, throw them into space, or someone says later on, which I think is actually great. Like, that's a brilliant way of dealing with the problem. You know, just and then they're not causing any more trouble. So
I actually felt really, really bad for these 2 bad guys in this first scene because it's literally about like 7 minutes of just getting beat down by about 8 different superheroes. I kind of felt bad for them in the end.
Yeah.
That is what it is. They come back later in the series in a fun way.
So as we progress this episode, and we can, I don't know if you guys have got any more on Robert Kirkman and his involvement in this, because I think he's an executive producer of this. But quite heavily
involved, I think, because he wrote it was him and I think 2 other dudes who individuals who wrote and drew the Walking Dead comic. I'm not sure he was very involved in the TV show, which makes it really odd that all these Walking Dead actors are in this. But he's sort of like the not the driving force maybe, but you know, he's certainly like the man at the helm of this.
It was Corey Walker is the other, I think is also involved in but there's quite a few. Ryan Otley as well, I think, in terms of the comics. So it's quite old, isn't it? It's from 2002, 2003, I think, is when this first came out.
Yeah,
so
I hadn't heard of it before, but I mean, none of us are massive comic book readers, and if we were, like, are we really reading like the third comic book company?
So it is a kind of. There's a long standing, and there's lots and lots of lore. Like, I was having a look on the Wikipedia page for the comics, and you get halfway down and there's no headings, and you think, oh my god, right? No, I think I'm just gonna close this tab. I don't really care about any.
I know enough.
Yeah,
that'll be fine.
They're very like all the other superhero Wikipedia pages, except the DC ones are like in the 30s, you know, and the Marvel ones as well. You're like, well, at least there's not that.
When Superman took down Hitler, there is a bit of a. So after this point in the episode, then we've just had, what did we talk about? We talked about the bully Todd, who Mark Grayson fails to beat up, and then literally that same day, like later that night, his powers emerge. And
he's lucky because he could have ripped this guy's head off. Prison for life, mate.
Yeah, well, he throws the trash can into space
through this kid's face and killed him. He's dead.
Yeah.
There was an accident.
So that's kind of fun, isn't it? And then let's get to the daddy issues thing now, because he goes and tells his dad, and his dad, like, for some reason, even though he seems to have been like pursuing this and been interested in this, is kind of not that happy, or just a bit nonplussed by the whole thing. And I just, you know what?
He's a dick.
He's a
dick.
J.K.
Simmons is a dick.
Omni-Man, You know what though? Can we please get this daddy issue stuff out of my media? Like I'm dead. You know what I think would be a better superpower if he actually was a good dad. I think that would be an amazing.
Unconditional love. You're right, Sam. That would be a better superpower.
Unconditional love would be an incredible superpower. Can you imagine? Can you actually imagine if someone could do that?
Can I imagine a father with unconditional love? No, I can't. I literally can't.
You literally can't. And I honestly, like I did feel that the Omni-Man stuff, in terms of I thought of Dead Forced. I thought, where is this coming from? We're not given any of that.
It takes up a lot of screen time for. To be honest, like this father-son relationship is maybe the least interesting the least interesting part of this episode.
The least interesting thing in media, in all of television and cinema. I couldn't give a fuck about your daddy issues.
Does anything else noteworthy happen before we get to like our mid-episode, well, not mid-episode credits, but our like...
It's basically just him like testing his kind of his superpowers and deciding on a name and finding a suit.
I did like how they did the whole him going up and learning to fly. Like he was learning to ride his bike with his dad, and you referenced.
I quite liked the scene where they're playing baseball as well, catch up in the sky. That was quite good. So they're like literally one's facing one way, one the other, and they're like throwing the ball right the way around the earth.
How many passenger jets does this thing take out on its way around the atmosphere? Like, because it goes
back
through a mountain.
A wad of birds just being dragged by its wake, like
and it's the sort of thing you can do in animation. I think that like in a movie, like you don't really have time for this shite because it's a 2-hour movie, and I do appreciate that you get some stuff here that you don't really get in a lot of like superhero stuff. You get them sort of flying in the sky, throwing a ball at each other around the earth, and they have a race to Mount Everest later on, and like, you get some fun little like we're both fucking immortal gods scenes that are kind of funny, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's that I do enjoy that. Like again, it's the minutiae of being a superhero, not to the extent of fucking Falcon and the Winter Soldier when we're going to get a bank loan. I mean, not that level of minutiae. Please, God, stop. But the level of minutiae where you're like, learning how to fly, like you'd have to learn how to do it.
I don't need to see the cops racially profile superheroes, but
I'm good. And you need your dad to teach you how to fly because he's Superman. Like there's lots of things which we don't really get much. We don't really get much kind of interest in. Sorry if there was a phone call there, but so there's lots of fun things that we see in this, and then it kind of gets into the regular superhero stuff.
We have the turn, don't we? The regular superhero things, kind of. This episode
I meant Mark Grayson flying around, doing his thing, pretending, fighting bad guys,
getting his ass kicked a little bit by bad guys until he figures out what he's doing.
We have some funny shots fired at other properties. He makes fun of what stupid name Kick-Ass is. He goes, "Oh, what about Ass Kicker? No, that's a fucking stupid name." And we move on to the next scene. Are you talking about when he like puts on his fake suit and he goes to?
Yeah, but it's boring, so who cares? Let's talk about.
It's your typical Spider-Man like catching people who've robbed bodegas sort of thing scene, and it's like you need it, but ultimately it doesn't really. It's more of a. Oh, well, now we're on to the next thing. We meet Mark Hamill, who's the tailor in this, by the way.
Fucking needless casting. Christ almighty.
It does make you wonder, like, how did they get all these people? Like, I know money, but you don't have limitless money.
Yeah, but Mark Hamill's not getting out of bed. He's not doing this for the money. Again, Mark Hamill has more money than God. Every time we say Star Wars, Mark Hamill gets a check.
Mark, I know you're recording voices for the Joker and you've got this Star Wars stuff going on, and obviously you're all over Twitter at the same time as having a life and all of that. Could you possibly come and voice this really, really disposable Taylor character in this TV show? I promise it's only going to take 4.5 minutes of your time.
Yeah,
that's the thing, though. Like, it literally, like, you could almost understand it if he was one of the main cast, but he isn't. He's a nobody. He isn't a superhero. He's in it for like 5 minutes.
I didn't even notice it was him. And that's probably a good thing.
And a similar thing with John Hamm. Like, if you've got Mark Hamill, like, you kind of want Mark Hamill in. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
don't want
Yeah.
like John
And I
Hamm
haven't-
just appearing as a weird security guard who's not involved with the rest of the characters is a bit like why?
And you'll have to answer the question: does he appear in any of the rest? Because he doesn't appear in. I've seen episode 2, and he doesn't appear in
I've
that.
watched the 4 episodes that are out. I've watched all 4 of them, and I don't think he reappears. I mean,
literally,
we've
in one
already got the
episode.
costume. We get the costume by the end of this episode.
So what else can he
Kinda
do?
Like,
Yeah.
what else do you need this tailor for?
He's maybe going to come like an Alfred the Butler type, you know,
I thought that, but then but why? Why would you need like an Alfred the Butler type?
just to take the piss out of Alfred the
Your
Butler.
dad's God. Why would you need a butler also?
Yes, although as we'll discuss
would-
at the end of the episode, his dad's God but a dick.
Well,
so
let's get into the end because like that's the money shot in this episode, really.
37 minutes is
it
when.
comes out of nowhere.
Well, 37 minutes, and I was like, "Oh, cool, it's over." And I thought it was a similar thing to WandaVision, which has like 40 minutes of credits. You know, it's so long, and then it's just the credits at the end. And I thought, oh, well, there we go. It's going to be 10 minutes of translated by whatever else. And then it went to that weird like dun Invincible created by whatever, and then it quite quickly just went away, and we carry on. I thought, okay, that's fine.
It was
And
rushing
then-
Flash on a date. That's what
Yeah.
it was.
So
Cuts to-
the question I have, and this is maybe answered later on, but in slightly earlier than this, Omni-Man punches his son really hard, and he kind of goes down hurt, and he's a bit like, oh, again, daddy issues, wah. But there's also
My dad viciously assaulted me, and he's God, so it hurt. That's
wah.
fair, Sam.
So, and then later on we get to see that he's actually incredibly evil and violent, and something has taken over him, or he is evil and whatever else. But
Has a
there's
twin, something.
I wonder if there's a bit of foreshadowing there with the violence that he hits his son with, and if that's kind of like hinting that this guy is an absolute maniac, or
Well-
if it's just unrelated.
There is this kind of like because he's not. It's established in this episode. He's not a member of this like Justice League. He thinks he's above it because he's God. He is, I suppose. But he's like
Literally.
I don't really do teams, guys, and I'm not going to try not to spoil it for you guys at all either, or for the audience. and
I
such,
don't
but
care.
You don't get like I've watched 4 episodes and we still don't have like a clear indication of why he's doing these things. However, you do get like instances of this guy, like, you know, he's not Superman. He's not like, I must not harm these people. Like he is pretty ruthless, and I think like I wouldn't say like, and obviously we just watch him murder 7 like superheroes in this end scene, Sam. So I get what you mean,
3
like
minutes.
massively evil, but like you get the feeling there's some sort of like agenda. There's some reason he's done it. He's not just murdering them for the sake of murdering them. Like
Apparently, he's more powerful than all of that, you know, of Justice League combined.
But that
which is the,
is the
worrying
problem with Superman. Is that he is more powerful than everyone else, Joe, because he's God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this was for me after watching the Justice League as well.
I was gonna say,
really, really cathartic. Like, oh yes, they're all
as
dead.
the destroyer of all tension,
This feels
that is
good.
Superman. You know, it is as we said, it is startlingly violent. I actually quite enjoyed, like, I enjoyed not necessarily the gore, but like the way that the show just went, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now, and completely turned
Just out of nowhere.
on a pivot. I mean, we get to see like literally he squeezes Red Rush's head.
With Russian Flash, yeah. Pops like a cabbage.
Until it like explodes in like the glorious.
With the Batman analog, he just grabs him and like swings him by the feet into the wall, and he's dead. It's just like his spine pops out, and you're like, oh, because that's just a dude. He hasn't even got any superpowers. That's just a dude.
Wonder Woman, when he snaps her head,
Yeah.
all the way round, and then she throws up blood while her head is backwards, which you kind of think, well, yeah, like or everything would be connected if still not, you know, it's very, very violent. I
The
assume
fish he like
he-
literally brains as well. Like he literally brains the fish, and
Oh,
yeah,
thank
the
God,
lizard thing he like
he
rips in
kills
half.
Rob Schneider.
the fish.
I mean, Aquaman.
What is the fish? What is the fish? But
Yeah,
there's
the fish is a great like. Isn't Aquaman fucking stupid? And you're like,
Aquaman's
yeah,
stupid.
Aquaman is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that joke where you're like, what would you prefer? The mermaid, like the fish head mermaid with fish like human legs,
Yeah.
or the other way around? Like, what would be better? You know, but there's just lots of there's lots of interesting ways to die here. But again, maybe tonally the first like 30 minutes doesn't really match the end, and there's a lot that changes at that point. You think, oh, okay, so this is what type of show it is. And I wonder, in terms of just like the practicalities of attracting an audience, if you'd not be better off maybe leading with that, maybe having a little bit of a scene before where we get to see Omni-Man, his hulking figure breathing, and then we see the array of bodies, and then from that point you're like, oh, okay, something's going to happen. It's almost just to finish the point. It's almost like foreshadowing is good storytelling, and if you tell people what's going to happen before it happens, they can kind of get into it a little bit more.
I think this works though as like a shock factor thing. I'll let you come in a second, Joe. But for me, this certainly is like, oh, well, that was quite, like you said, Sam, you get your credits. You're like, oh, well, that was a somewhat interesting. But I probably at that point was like, I probably won't watch any more of this. But you have the credits, and then it's like, this ain't Yo Mama's Justice League. And you get that moment of like, oh, shit, why is anything happening like this? And that's what makes me want to come back and watch the next episode. And you're shaking your head at me, and I'm not sure if it's at me, but like, it very much is just kind of like what is everyone's deal? What's happening here? And I don't know if you felt the same, Joe.
I really quite liked it, yeah, because I mean, everything leading up to this point had been that, like you say, it was fine, but it wasn't anything that I was really that interested in going forward with. There's some funny bits, but it was just like any other sort of, almost like a superhero cartoon. And I was kind of questioning, it's like, why is this for adults? There's like some little bits kind of in the build-up, like, but there's nothing there.
And they're alluding to sex and things. It's not like,
but there's nothing there that I'd be like, adult, really. I mean, there's worse. And then it gets to the credits, and even that bit starts like dead kind of light, because the Russian Flash is on a date, and he makes a joke because he basically goes and rescues somebody dead quickly, and then comes back, and she like lectures him about like leaving in the date when he told her he wouldn't do that, and stuff like that.
They flesh out these like Justice League characters, like some of them. Like you get Russian Flash, Red Rush. I really liked this character in this performance, and then he's murdered, and I'm like, oh, so we get no more of him. The Martian guy as well. You get like a nice scene with him and a kid, and then he's murdered, and it's a bit like, oh, well, I thought, oh, that's an interesting character.
And it all leads to it coming out of absolutely nowhere. And I quite liked that, because, you kind of got something was wrong when they're all kind of stood in this building where the Justice League meet. I don't know what it was. And they're all stood there like, who called us here? What's going on? Nobody's here. And then you see like Omni-Man appear, and you're kind of like, something's going down here. And then he just basically murders them all in about 3 minutes flat. And that kind of went, you know what, this is interesting.
It's doing something different, isn't it? I would say that as usual, we've done 40 minutes, so let's talk about the actual the first episode-iness of this. I think that's what makes this a really good opening episode to a series. Not necessarily like, I think they do an adequate job of establishing most of our characters in this, but I think it's this sort of like post-credits scene with the murdering of the Justice League that's really like maybe I do have a reason to want to know what's happened here.
It is curious, isn't it? And you do wonder like where. So if we don't have if we don't have the Avengers, Justice League, whatever analog, where's this show going to go? And obviously there's going to be, because of Hollywood, there's going to be some conflict between Mark Grayson and his dad, Omni-Man, and that's going to be the main thread throughout the show, I imagine. And maybe you can enlighten us there, Dave, with your further watching of this. But it's
sort of half a mystery, like why did he do this thing? And you've got different people within the show trying to figure it out. And you still get quite a lot of the Mark Grayson kind of like coming up as a superhero and learning different things. You get a lot of that and some teenage stuff and
Teenage Justice League appears,
kind of, yeah. You get like Teenage Justice. You get new superheroes, and like we meet these new characters who are going to be the sort of the actual voice cast of this, as opposed to this Justice League.
Who are still ridiculously like big names, like Gillian Jacobs and
but it's teasing it out a little, I think, and it's not quite what you'd expect either way. It's not like a full, now it's really dark and we're going to have this he's going to go after his dad or anything like that. It's kind of like a slow build. And again, I think we mentioned off the top, there's only going to be 6 episodes of this in this season. Yeah. So, like, they've not really got a lot more space to do stuff. So you don't know if it's just going to be like, well, are we going to resolve this or aren't we? And is that fine if we don't?
There's also a film that's been in production since, I think, about 2017.
I'm not sure if that has been canned in favour of this.
Nope. So Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg are attached as writers and directors with Universal Picture Distributing, and Kirkman has said, Robert Kirkman, the series creator, said that it's still in development as recently as January, and Rogen and Goldberg are still involved. So I think there's potential for whatever limited space that we get to explore in this being further developed in a movie, which might be all right. Probably won't be animated though, I imagine, or animated like this. I think we're going to have, for a film, you're going to have it as either live action or
I don't know. I could really get on board with like a 1980s Transformers-esque like film with all these famous actors and really shitty animation designed to sell toys. I could really get behind it because it's going to play on that kind of like.
Where's the naked capitalism? Like, where's the just absolutely we don't give a shit about.
We're on board
until they get red.
In Korea, 46 cents to animate 17 hours of footage, and buy the action figures only $49.95.
Yeah.
Accessories sold separately.
We're all on board with the animation until they get red wine out of the fridge, and then that's where we draw the line.
Really, really bothered me. I'm going to stop here. That in episode 4 of this, the mother opens the fridge, and they're obviously doing like a. I'm going to keep saying shots as if this is shot on a camera because they are kind of going for that feel. Yeah. Like she opens the fridge, and we see her through the fridge, and she grabs this bottle of wine that stood on the shelf in the fridge, by the way, not in the door. Again, like cardinal sin, bottles go in the door, especially open bottles. And she grabs this bottle, which is clearly like a Merlot. She gets the bottle, she pours it into a glass, and she drinks it. And I'm like, this woman is the biggest monster in this TV show. Like, who's drinking chilled Merlot? And it really, really offended me.
Welcome to Winecast, where we complain about the idiots and their wine drinking choices. Anyone drinking Merlot should fuck off and die anyway. So I don't know what's going on with that.
I'm not quite as genocide about people who choose to drink Merlot,
for life.
But you should be drinking it at room temperature.
Yeah. Put it next to the oven. That's a good tip. If you're a little bit chilly in the winter,
if you live in the UK and it's almost any time of the year, yes, it helps.
Yeah, 25 degrees outside. Put it next to the oven to warm it up because it's still going to be chilled. We're talking about wine, which maybe suggests to me that we've perhaps reached the end of our discussion about Invincible. Dave, you've got 2 more episodes left. Joe, are you going to carry on watching this?
I've watched 2 episodes, so I watched the second episode today, and it kind of continues in a very similar theme almost. But again, you do get to see again. Don't want to ruin anything for you, Sam, but I don't think you're going to watch.
No, ruin it. I don't care, and we've already said spoilers. So
yeah. So you get another kind of glimpse at Omni-Man losing his shit. So there's like aliens invade from another dimension.
Is it genocide in episode 2, Joe?
Yes, he basically goes through. He basically after he recovers. So when he kills the Justice League, he does like need hospital treatment pretty badly. But when he recovers, there's this group of aliens who've been invading throughout the episode in episode 2, and the Teenage Justice League have been trying to like defeat them, and they keep coming back. So anyway, Omni-Man then recovers and decides to take it to the universe. So he goes through and he literally kills every single one of these aliens.
But he's not like killing them, Sam. He's like throwing meteors at the planet. He is like launching their own nukes. He decimates the surface of this planet. Like it's not like you can't come back here. I've slapped your head guy around. The women and the children, like, you know,
he salts the earth. He salts the earth.
There's a great bit where Mark goes back and he's like, "Oh, Mum, Dad went through this portal, and like I don't know what's happened to him." And she's like, "Oh, so he'll be late for dinner then?" And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Me and your dad have been together for like 20 years. This is not the first time he's gone to like slap some aliens around." And the son's
and then he just walks back through the door. Yeah,
he walks back through the door with a full beard because he's been gone for like quite a long time. In
time dilation,
yeah. He comes back with a full beard, like filthy. And he's like, "I'm gonna go for a shower," and it's all fine. And he is just Like, he has just killed billions of people, the younglings, everyone is dead.
Even the younglings.
Even the younglings.
At least he goes for a shower, so you know.
But there are some ways like that it kind of subverts the superhero genre, and like I like this take on Superman where he is a fucking lunatic because he's more powerful than everybody else.
And see, that's maybe where I'm just like, I'm so tired of superheroes. I'm even tired of the satire. I'm even tired of the subversion. Like, you're gonna have to give me something absolutely like tack sharp for me to I just like, this is fine. I didn't hate watch it. I didn't really particularly enjoy it, but I was like, cool, there, like, and that's okay. Like, nothing. We don't have to love everything or hate everything. No. But I do just think, for me, there's a superhero malaise here that I can't quite get over. And you know what? I have you guys. You can tell me about it, and I'll go, oh, cool.
And that's fine, you know, Sam. It's fine to like something or to not like something, unless, of course, we disagree. Whenever, but
Fuck
on this
you.
occasion, I like this. I think it's quite snappily written. I think that like it's funny without being forceful about it. I think it's kind of like coincidentally funny, while at the same time being intentional. It's a light hand, is what I'm saying. It's not like bashing you around the face. I think that it's quite like a run of the mill, fairly basic superhero story at its core. But they do enough interesting stuff with it that I'm kind of on the hook. I really enjoy this. I think the performances are pretty good as well. Again, the animation is very like He-Man-esque, but
it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional.
Yeah,
but it is like, it does have that same jankiness, which is very. It's maybe we're like probably just a little bit too young to be like really have watched He-Man on Saturday mornings on TV. But there's still like I do have a nice little nostalgia thing. I think for us, like the animation would be like Spider-Man animated series from the 90s.
That's also dog shit. Yeah,
it's terrible, but please, someone make a TV show that looks like that, because I love the aesthetic of it. You know.
Yeah. It's a style choice in of itself. Joe.
I mean, I would say I kind of fall on the side of Dave. I went into it expecting not to like it, even though, like, you know, I chose it. I went into it because I'm very much like Sam, you know, like, I was on the WandaVision episode of this, and I don't care. Like, superheroes, fuck it. I have no interest in Marvel anymore. But this kind of hooked me somehow. And
it's a really good pilot, I think.
It is. It is. It's a very solid pilot. It's different enough to kind of make me want to continue watching it. And you know, I think actually, like, the killing of the Justice League kind of got me. You know what? Nice. They haven't like
they've killed War Woman.
Yeah, Wonder Woman. Yes.
Now what's going to happen?
And at the start of episode 2 as well, that's another thing. Like, they do, like, you know, have these people come in and find all of the Justice League, like, lying dead. And there's this bit where they're, like, all trying to, like, give them medical attention and things. And you're, they're not going to fucking resuscitate them, are they? And it turns out, no, they're all dead. And you're like,
so they try. And it's, again, like a nice little subversion of, oh, no, they are dead. They are dead.
When you see someone's brain, I mean, that's usually it, isn't it? You know, when it's like literally plucked out of someone's head, like a cherry.
Is it the second episode, Joe, with Duplicate?
The woman who, like, can duplicate herself.
Yeah, so there's like a character, and there's some funny things with that where essentially what she does in the first fight, she can like change herself. I think 3 of her or 4 of her or something. And the first fight is like there are 3 of her, and her job is to run away fast enough and replicate fast enough that as the other 2 are killed, there's always one alive. And I'm like, how does that work? But there's a fun scene where one of the, again, spoilers for episode 2 of Invincible. Is that the scene with the shower, Joe? Is it episode 2? Isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
One of the Britta from Community comes in and she's like, "Oh, hi, Kate. What are you doing?" Blah blah blah. She's at the shower in their teen team sort of like gymnasium, I guess, whatever. And she's like, "Oh, hi, what's going on?" And she goes into the shower, and her boyfriend's in there, and with the other 2 Kates, like there's 3 of them, and it's really like that's funny. But like again, like a bit of a subversion of like, yeah, of course, teenagers are going to be fucking even if they have superpowers. Like it's a nice commentary on how
And it's going to be even hotter. Oh yeah, superpowers. There we go.
I'm
That'll
telling
do
you,
it.
man. I'm telling you, Rule 34 that this porn already exists on the internet.
Of course it does. Of course it does. It was moments after it was distributed.
I must say the other thing, just to like before we go as well, the other bit I quite liked in the second episode. So in the first episode, Matt Grayson or Invincible accidentally ends up in space, and obviously can't breathe, and he fades and like crashes into the earth. The second episode, he has to go and fight somebody in space, and he like asks his dad, and he says, "But if it's in space, there's no oxygen," and he says, "So you just don't breathe." And then he realizes he doesn't need to breathe in space. He just takes a really big breath when he gets to like.
Because he's a god. Yeah.
Because he's a god. He just takes he just gets to like the highest point and goes, and then just flies in space and fights.
But that's the fun thing as well, because it's like they sit down to have. He has this battle with this guy in space, this fight, and they're communicating with thoughts, and like he has him pinned on the moon, and he accidentally does like a timeout thing, and the guy goes, "Oh, you're using your timeout," and he's like, "What?" And this guy's like, "Oh, well, we'll have a timeout," and they sit down, and he's like, "Oh, so what's going on? What do you want to talk about?" And he's like, "Why are we having a timeout? Who the fuck are you? What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, well, you signed up to the Planetary Defense Protocol test. My name's whatever his name is," and he goes, "And this is Earth," and he's like, "No, this is Earth," and he goes, "With an E," and he goes, "Yeah," and he's like, "Shit, I think I'm in the wrong place, man. I'm really sorry about all that," and he fucks off, and it's like a nice little. Oh, he's not a villain at all. He's just gone, and it's like
because he's testing the defenses. Yeah,
again, like a nice subversion of like. We don't have to have a fight. This isn't how this guy doesn't have to solve every problem by like kicking the shit out of somebody. In fact, he rarely does that because he's not very good.
Yeah, no. and that's a fun thing to explore, isn't it? If through the lens of the drudgery that is the rest of superheroes, I'd perhaps argue.
Yeah.
So I think that's us, isn't it? This has been a good discussion. Yeah. I think it's a fun show. I think if you. Presumably you have listened and watched if you've listened to this, but I think it's a good one to explore a little bit further, and it's nice to have something that's a little bit different, even if it is just daddy issues and superheroes.
I think we're going to solidly avoid anything fantastical for a couple of weeks.
Please, God, I'm going to enforce that with my limited ability to do so. But I really think let's do some grounded shows. Let's do some bit more down to earth.
Maybe a family sitcom next week, and maybe like a murder film, a film about people murdering other people.
Don't say it, Joe.
None of them have superpowers. Nobody's a wizard. Let's just have that. Will be nice. I think there's no space involved. Let's just have rich white people killing other rich white people for rich white people reasons.
Dave,
so we're watching the Tudors then, yeah.
The Tudors. That is
bit too incesty for me, Joe. I'll be honest. I should have said. Let's keep the incest to like the minimum. Let's keep it background level.
A bit too much for you, Dave, or not enough? I'm not really sure.
One or the other, Sam. I just don't like sitting on the fence.
And with that, I think we'll.
It's either no incest or all incest. That's it.
I think we'll end the episode there. Thanks, guys. It's been fun. We'll see you next week.
See you later.
Pause, and after show. Hello. My audio, my GarageBand decided to stop recording about 36 minutes in.
Good.
So
I could see you making faces at your screen, but you didn't like it.
Fucking hell, bastard. I don't know what. It just stopped. No notification, nothing. It just stopped. However, we've got this, so I can just download.
Did you find it all right the other day with Ross's thing?
I haven't done it yet, but it'll be fine. 12 minutes or so, I think it is. I've missed.
Finish before 9 o'clock, can I say as well?
Yes,
the podcast done by 9. Next week we can just do that. What is it, Grace and Frankie and Grace, or whatever you mentioned?
Yeah,
this week?
And I think let's do brain work. Let's do Knives Out this week. Let's go first thought, best thought. It's a good movie.
Okay.
It's a good movie. It's fun. It's grounded, relatively. It's rich white people doing rich white people things, but it's not. None of them are wizards.
It's media. Yeah.
It's media.
You're a wizard, Harry.
The Invincible was. I have absolutely no desire to watch more of this, but I did. It's like kind of fun, isn't it? It's kind of fun. Like I want more fun TV. I want less brooding.
It's quite light, isn't it? It's quite inconsequential.
I have to watch some fucking person with unlimited strength feel sorry for themselves. Like honestly, you can lift up anything. You could get a job as a military strongman, and you would be able to walk around solving mysteries with zero concerns. Yeah. Oh, it's so hard being a superhero. It's such a narrative I'm bored of, like the whole thing. Whereas this is like, oh, okay, we're slightly different. We're a slightly different take.
Again, it's what it is, and what becomes in the later episodes, especially from Mark Grayson being the lead character. It is being a superhero isn't hard. Being a fucking person is hard, and that's kind of like that's at its core of why. That's why Spider-Man works.
Yes.
That's why Batman works for a very different reason. But like, it's actually being a normal person is really difficult. Being a superhero where you don't follow any of the rules of normal society, much easier in a lot of ways.
You should have said that on the episode because this is the after show. I'll edit it. But no, I think it's a good point because it's like, what is the worst bits? The bits I don't like is when they're not having to be humans. That have, Justice League is just a bunch of gods just charging around, destroying buildings. I liked how Omni-Man said to
no consequences for their actions whatsoever. Yeah.
No, but he said you didn't have to make that much mess. Like,
yeah.
What are you doing? Like, you just throw him into space. Like, that's a great way of like disarming that whole thing. Because you think about how much. What's the one? Is it the Incredibles where?
Superheroes get cancelled because they keep blowing up the city.
In the start of the second one, which is a pretty average movie, but it's the start of the second one. The Underminer's there and he's like literally just burying through, and they save the day and they trash the place. And afterwards, they're being interviewed when they say, well, what would you prefer us to do? Just let him get away? And he's like, yes, we have insurance. Which is like. Absolutely. Please do not come again. Like, we do not need you. We'll insure it and we'll move on. And
I'm sure in the DC comics, I'm sure that Lex Luthor has like a construction firm who specialise in like rebuilding things after superheroes have destroyed it.
Superman's lasered through 4 miles of buildings.
It's Marvel with Iron Man where he funds a building company that like they'll come in and rebuild your school when Superman blows it up fighting somebody.
It's very yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to just have something like a bit more throwaway. Like this isn't affecting a universe, especially with it being heroes that I don't know the fake Justice League, but with it being characters we don't know. It's like a nice little like, oh, I wonder what is going to happen, and if you go away and I never see you again, that's also fine.
Yeah. Which is what happens to the Justice League. Yes. Russian Flash gets his head.
I did like Russian Flash. It was a bit of a shame he went.
The fish, who cares?
The fish, who cares?
Anyone else, who cares, really?
The Immortal, who cares? War Woman. There were some funny jokes, like she's got a club rather than a sword. But apart from that, I'm a bit,
lizard guy who literally his superpower is he can tie people up.
He's the Martian, man. He's a Martian, an actual.
He's a Martian. Lizard
That's
guy.
not important or interesting.
Fun to
but yeah, we should try and do certainly more because I'm sure I've got no evidence for this because I've just been rewatching the Sopranos and that's kind of my life at the minute. But I'm sure there are series being made now that aren't about superheroes. Maybe take some finding, but
Grace and Frankie is about Is that where both the two couples? Yes, one of them played by Martin Sheen. Basically, there's two couples, and then the two men in the couples come out as gay, and they come out as that they're in love with each other, and it's like the dynamic of that. And it's also really funny. It's I can't remember the other actors. Jane Fonda. Yeah, I think Jane Fonda's in it, and
Jane Fonda.
It's really fun. I don't know how good. Like, I'm not sure how much of you maybe have to watch a bit more of it, but we'll
get into it. We'll tackle it. I'm always excited to watch stuff that takes me outside of my comfort zone. On a side note, my sister-in-law has been watching Grey's Anatomy. I was there today looking at a fence, and I was like, what the fuck are you watching? And she's like, oh, it's Grey's Anatomy. I'm not really into like medical shows. And I'm like, but isn't it just a bunch of sexy people having sex in scrubs? It's not 100%. Like it's not a medical show.
100% what it is. It's Nicola really likes it. And to be fair, it isn't terrible. But number one, it's just so bleak. Like this, it's just so I can't do bleak shows. Maybe it's the pandemic. Maybe it's just my emotional weakness. But I just can't be dealing with like, oh, now someone's dead, and look, that kid's an orphan, and like, and they also had like COVID episodes recently where they're like dealing with, and you think, this is too much for me. It's too real.
You know what our level is, Sam? We want an episode where I can tune in every week and watch you solve a crime. That's what I want. Yeah. Whether that crime is a medical crime, whether that crime is a murder crime,
nobody
whether
gets
that
hurt.
Crime is an alien intrusion crime. I don't care. Yeah. I want to come back next week and be like, all right, what are we doing this week?
And the other thing is, so it's bleak, and it's just I can't deal with the amount of like fucking and and she loves me now and I don't love, and I know like that is the basis of everything we watch, and basically everything we watch otherwise is a soap opera. But
wish it was the basis of life, Sam.
Yeah. they add Justice League it's a soap opera, but it's superheroes. Like all of it is that, but it's really quite, it just goes on and on a little bit too much, but people enjoy it, and obviously people do, and Shonda Rhimes has more money than God, so good for her.
I'm sure we'll get to it, just on the basis of like
to counterbalance all of the superhero shit we've been doing.
Can we not? Like, what would really do it is if we did like, if we would just watch an episode of Doctors, that British like daytime soap, because daytime soaps are like the lowest common denominator. I've had the misfortune. I mean, young people these days, God, we sound old. Young people these days won't remember like if you were off sick from school and you didn't have Sky, like your options were.
It was a barren wasteland.
Doctors or Antiques Roadshow. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Don't forget
all
fucking
you got.
Bargain Hunt, Dave. Fucking Bargain Hunt.
Or some shite like that, Joe, which I'm sure is still on the air and still has like a large viewership.
My dad watches it all the time.
Cannot reach the remote because they are somehow like convalescing. I'm sure that
there's an episode. There's an episode of Pilot Light. If you can find the first episode of Bargain Hunt.
I'm going to say at this point, as we've mentioned Bargain Hunt, I think we're all contractually obliged to stop podcasting immediately when we mention Bargain Hunt. That is a line.
So I'm going to David Dickinson money, do we? Is he dead?
Maybe. David Dickinson, I think he's okay.
He's not on Bargain Hunt anymore.
Joe, quiet. If you made it this far, listener, well done. Achievement unlocked for you.
If you aren't British and you're not sure what Bargain Hunt is, don't worry about it. You're fine.
Look forward to our future pilot episode. We are a podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify, etc. Imaginary Movie Podcast, where you can get a more condensed, less rambly, and less Bargain Hunt.
No mention of Bargain Hunt yet.
Version.
And the audio quality is much, much better.
The audio is fine. It's all good.
And you don't have to look at us. That's
a more curated, more produced episode.
Absolutely.
And if you like it, get in touch. We have a Twitter, which is also, I think, Imaginary Pod.
It is
so hit us up on Twitter or comment on our YouTube episodes. It would be really nice if there were people out there. So just like more like an alien life.
Well,
kind
there
of
is.
Thing. Are
there
people
is.
listening to this?
There is people out there. We have an audience. So get in touch. But until next time, enjoy your watching of Invincibles and Bargain Hunt, and we'll see you on the next episode.